land belonging to the Coast Miwok and Southern Pomo. The ASP, however, is located in San Francisco, and that's on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. So it is my extreme pleasure today to present our special evening speaker to you. I wanted to just mention a few things. One is that if you don't know what the Astronomical Society of the Pacific is, we are a 134-year-old professional astronomy society that specializes in bringing all kinds of astronomers together, whether they're professionals, amateurs, educators, enthusiasts, children, families, teachers, everyone, and forming a community dedicated to helping people understand and appreciate astronomy. Our mission is to increase public understanding of science through the lens of astronomy and prepare the next generation of astronomy enthusiasts and professionals. So a few times tonight, you're going to hear us say, if you want to donate something to this free event, in the chat, there'll be a little link you can go to, and you can donate as often as you want, as much or as little. And all the money goes to our educational initiatives. So that's that. We'll talk about that again later, probably. I also want to remind people that are here for the symposium that will start tomorrow at 8:30, and you have special links to get to that. Finally, during this, for those of you joining us on the webinar, there's a chat space, and you will be asked every now and again to answer questions, and you can answer those questions that the speaker will pose in chat. If you have questions for the speaker, please write those questions in the Q&A area so we can tell them apart. And if you want to just chat away and pass virtual notes in the chat space, of course, you're more than welcome to do that. So let me start by introducing our speaker in our talk this evening. Oops, sorry about that. I'm really pleased and honored to introduce Jessica Harris to you tonight. She's a physicist, informal educator, science communicator, business owner, and to students, she's affectionately called Auntie Jess. Jessica brings a decade of experience to STEM education and public outreach. She has supported students to achieve educational outcomes at the Space Telescope Science Institute as their education outreach specialist and director of their Space Astronomy Summer Program. She's led public advocacy initiatives to drive change in programming efforts at the NRAO as their STEAM Education Program Development Officer and site leader for the National Astronomy Consortium. Most recently, she was the program director for the Clark Scholarship Program at the University of Virginia in the Engineering School in Charlottesville. One of the reasons she's here tonight is she's the founder and CEO of her own consulting firm, and it focuses on three important pillars: diversity, racial equity and inclusion, education and public outreach, and of course, Auntie Jess mentoring. She's currently the chair of the Human Rights Commission in the city of Charlottesville and serves as an outside expert on the National Astronomy Consortium Advisory Council. And tonight, she's going to talk about the importance of mentoring in STEM. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our speaker tonight, Jessica Harris.
Yay. Thank you so much, Linda, for an amazing introduction. Thank you for inviting me here. And I'm so excited to have a discussion about something that's so dear to my heart. So, you know, my pronouns are she and her. And thank you for all of us that are joining here in the webinar and those that have logged in via YouTube. Y'all have showed up and I really, really appreciate it. While I have the mic tonight, I would like to invoke Auntie Jess's bubble and create some norms. I ask that you're here. Of course, you're present in your being and you're logged in, but I ask you to be present and engaging, being thoughtful about what's being discussed, asking thought-provoking questions, and engaging with me via chat, via the chat function and through the Q&A. I ask that if you do ask questions that you use I statements. I usually invoke the Vegas rule when I say what stays here. What happens here stays here, but since we're recording it and this is posted live, we can't do that. So I ask that if you're on, if you can share what you've learned to others. I also want to encourage you that in the space that I am holding tonight, it's safe and it's brave. We're here to gain knowledge. I'm here to share with you my lived experiences and some good takeaways from those lived experiences and research about how you can improve your practice as practitioners, as educators, as teachers, as mentors yourselves, as aunties, as uncles, as citizens of this country or other countries. So invoking this safe space. And if you're an attendee, please, I know quite a few have already started to engage in the chat, but if you could include your name, and let me do it too, so I can show you that if you could put out after your name, your pronouns, that would be really helpful. All right, so as we're moving forward, I'm going to take a nonverbal agreement that you're in agreement with my Auntie Jess bubble rules, and we'll move forward. So today, you're here because you're intrigued and want to know about the importance of mentorship within STEM. And the question that I posed within the abstract was, why is mentorship important? And so I felt that I'd best to answer this through my own story of STEM. So this is Jessica, 7 or 8 years old. I have younger pictures, but as young as I can remember, when I was asked, what did I want to be when I grew up? I said I wanted to be a teacher. And it's not completely out of the blue because I have amazing educators within my family line. My auntie, who is currently a principal, and several of my family members who've been educators for many years. So I got it honest in wanting to be an educator, wanting to teach. So throughout school, especially in middle school, I remember the first time posing the question to my teachers, always like, why are we doing this? Like, I don't know why, but like fractions were scary to me once they got to a certain like number. And then when I went to high school, my first class, I don't know why they thought I would be successful in this, but it was geometry and it was hard. If math ever was hard for you, if you are in the chat, can you put down some, let's do some green hearts. If math has ever been hard for you, ever struggled, if you could put down some green hearts for me in the chat, so I know that I'm not alone, that math was really hard for me. So I attended, yes, I'm not alone. I got some people in the house. Okay, thank you so much. So I am a military brat. I guess, always, once you are, you will always be. My father was stationed in Anchorage, Alaska. I went to Bartlett High School there, and that was my geometry class. So just referencing the building. And something that I realized early on, right? This is my freshman year. I didn't know the things that I know now about growth mindset and all of those things. I maybe even stubbornly didn't know that like being good at math was like a girl thing. I was determined. I wanted to really understand what I was learning. So I was determined to come to class early, before class. I was determined to stay after class because I really, really wanted to understand what was happening. And I developed at a young age, or I mean, in high school, that for me was understanding the concepts, even if it meant my grade sacrificed. So when I was going through, I would constantly ask those questions of my educators. Why are we doing this? And so I had my algebra teacher, Mary Moran. She's amazing. And for many years, even post high school, she would still message me on my birthday, just have a birthday. But anyways, I asked her, why are we doing these problems? We kept doing these problem sets. They were tedious. They were annoying. I didn't know why we kept doing them. And she said something that like stood and really changed the foundation for me. She said, we're doing this because it's building critical and analytical thinking skills. And I was like, oh, I love that, because that I can use across the board. It made sense to me. And so it was at that early age, it was in college, it was at Bartlett that I was like, I'm going to be a teacher, but now I know what I want to do. I want to teach math to other high school students. And so I graduated from Alaska. And you may be wondering, like, how did I go all the way from Alaska to Grambling State University in Louisiana? And it was because I had an amazing mentor at Bartlett who she's now passed away, but she had a organization that was the Alaska Grambling Connection, where Grambling has a program where students in their high school year can go to Grambling and take classes for the full summer. And so my freshman year in college, one of my first classes was physics for non-science majors, because I didn't tell you, I declared my major at the time as secondary education with a concentration in math. Again, I was set, I'm going to be a teacher, I'm going to teach math. So I met this amazing professor, Dr. Tang Zhu, in this intro to physics class. And I don't know what it was, but me and him, I was in his orbit. He was the director of the LSAMP program, the Lewis Stokes Alliance for Minority Students. And he was trying to convince me to change my major into physics, because then he can support me, he can buy books. I was a first generational student, didn't have a lot of funding on my own, was going to school based on scholarships. So a lot of what he was saying, I wanted to entertain. He got me my first internship at Duke University. And during that internship, it was a connection with one of his friends. At that time, it wasn't very common for freshmen to get an internship that, at the end of their first year, but it was an amazing turning point. And I wanted to share an email exchange between me and Dr. Zhu during that time. That was a pivotal moment between us and my trajectory within STEM. So we would often send weekly, if not even daily, like updates. And in this one particular email on August 10th, 2005, he messaged me. I got to give him some updates, and he messaged me and said, I want you to be my student next year. I plan to bring you to the LSAP annual conference in November. I hope we can work hard to bring back the first place prize. That meant so much to me, that he wanted me to be his student. And that summer, I was diligent. I got a lot of advice from different people, and I asked them, like, hey, I want to teach math. Like, what's the best pathway? Should I be an educator? Should I go that path? Should I stay where I'm at? Or should I switch into physics and come to it from that point of view? And everyone said, hey, you can learn the pedagogy of the teaching. But if you really want to be a scientist, learn the science, and then you can always go back to school and pick up additional knowledge. And so that's what I did. And so I said in this email, I decided that I wanted to change my major over into physics. So this amazing mentor, who I met my freshman year, determined to be an educator, never, ever, ever thought about being a physicist, he changed my mind. Dr. Tang Zhu believed in me. He challenged me. I have this story when I came to him as a homework assignment. I didn't do my due diligence. I know I didn't do my due diligence. I didn't think he knew that I didn't do what I was supposed to do, but he saw straight through me. He said, Jessica, you haven't done your part, essentially in so many words. Sit here, work on this, and when you're ready, I'll come back. And he said something that when he came back, I stewed, but I had nowhere else to go at the time, sat, did my due diligence, came back to ask him. Actually, he came back, I don't know how much time, probably felt like eternity at the time, but maybe a few hours. And he said, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. It taught me a valuable lesson about the sacredness, almost in some ways, of a mentor and a mentee relationship. Coming prepared. And something I always tell my mentees all the time, this is a two-way street. I can have all the knowledge in the world that I want to give to you, but you have to be ready to receive. And so it was just it was a mind-blowing experience. And he made me feel seen. And you'll hear throughout this that feeling seen is it's a big tenet. It's almost like a love language for me, but he made me feel seen. I have this other story about Dr. Tang Zhu. I don't remember what class it was, but we were having a study hall session. And again, I told you, little girl, I wanted to understand the concepts. And we were in a study session, and it got to kind of a point where people were kind of on their own working on the problem. And this one particular set I was really like locked in on, and I had questions about, and he like locked in with me, and he was like on the board, he was explaining it. And I don't know if he was talking to anyone else in the crowd or anyone else in the room, but it felt like he was just talking just to me. It was just like such a magical moment. And I was like locked in him. He was locked in with me. He's on the board. Like I'm understanding like what's happening, but he was just such an amazing mentor. Unfortunately, Dr. Zhu eventually passed away suddenly. He succumbed to cancer. It's so many years past, I get a little emotional thinking about it, because I was visiting him in the ICU actually in Ruston before he got transferred to Shreveport. And even in the ICU, y'all, he was telling me what graduate schools, not graduate schools, but what schools I should go to for my following internships. He passed away maybe within a month's time from his ICU. And when I tell you, I am where I am today because this man believed in me, because this man invested in me, because he was my champion, because he challenged me. I have so many stories about just the 2 years plus that we had together. And so I want to come back to the question of why mentorship is important, because he was one person who changed the trajectory, my whole STEM career, because he invested, he saw something in me. And it was so special. He has Chinese heritage, and he often talked about me going home and visiting with him to his university where he graduated. And like, when he was in ITU, I was just done because we were planning it. I was going to do it. He said he was going to stick around for his son. And it was heartbreaking to lose someone who invested in me so dearly and so deeply. So that was my amazing mentor, Dr. Teng Zhu. He's a big part of why I do what I do. My aunties are too, but I'm sharing this from the STEM perspective. So I left Grambling and was accepted at Fisk University, a part of the Fisk Vanderbilt Bridge Master's to PhD program. And one of the first classes, again, I have this trend of taking classes that are really hard in my first year for some reason. But the first class that I took when I was at Fisk was radiative processes. I'll tell you a secret, like I had never taken any astronomy courses prior to that because we didn't have them offered at Grambling. So it was hard, but I was so proud, like I passed that course. I was able to study the Orion Nebula, always have a special place in my heart, specifically the extended Orion Nebula with my amazing mentor. It was almost kind of serendipitous how we met. We were able to travel to Chile, to the 1.5 meter telescope, life-changing. Being able to see the night sky in the Southern Hemisphere, pitch black, life-changing, just amazing. I remember there were nights when we were in between kind of observations and I would be like laying in this, like just laying on my back, like looking at the sky. It just was amazing and life-changing. And you may be wondering, like, why did I call this slide, the STEM journey, the leap? And it's because I reached a turning point where I was finishing, or I didn't know at the time, and this like coming to an end, but I was had to make a decision if I wanted to kind of stay on this path that had been ingrained into me since deciding to be a physicist, that the PhD was the path, right? I'm a Black woman. We want to increase the number of Black students and minority students and women into STEM. That had just been like explicitly told to me, implicitly told to me. And I was starting to tell the people that were around me, like, I love astronomy. Like, who cannot, like, breathtaking, like, images like this. This one's maybe not so breathtaking, but like, the image behind me is breathtaking. Shouts out to James Webb. Like, who doesn't get excited about that? But I realized, like, I wasn't excited as much about I was excited about the research, but not the times we had to sit and read articles and all of that. Like, I wanted to share it with other people. The teacher in me was like still there, still percolating, still wanting to come out. And so I was articulating to people like, hey, like maybe I can do this PhD program and then maybe do education in tandem. Like, what a wild idea. But everyone kept telling me, no, get a PhD, then you can do outreach. And I was dealing with just challenges. It was really hard for me being in a program that I didn't have a really strong astronomy background, and just doing my best to push forward and just kind of feeling discouraged without. I had some very low moments through this. And then this moment here haunted me for even 10 years after this. I met with my thesis advisor, and we had been advised, part of our program, we had professional development sessions, and they said, make sure when you ask your advisor, whoever's writing your recommendation, that they write you a strong letter of recommendations. So I'm like, I had already asked them to write me recommendations to graduate school. I'm like, cool, I'll follow up with him and just go and ask him to make me a strong letter of recommendations. And there was a lot that he said, but this sentence alone, again, is the thing that haunted me for years. He said, I didn't have the esoteric skills to continue in a PhD program in astrophysics. And my heart was broken. Like, what do you mean? Like, I have a bachelor's in physics. I'm potentially about to have a master's in physics. I did decide at that time that even though we're part of the master's to PhD for Vanderbilt, you could apply to the Vanderbilt PhD program, but you also had to apply potentially to other programs. So I was in this, right? What are esoteric skills? I said the same thing. Don't judge me, but I did the same thing. Like, what does that even mean? But anyways, it was heartbreaking. I just shared you a story of someone who changed my life. This person, my thesis advisor, amazing. He also changed my life. I got to study Orion. I got to work with one of the top professionals in our field, and so respected in what he does, but devastated my heart that he didn't think I had what it take to do a PhD. I was already teetering that I didn't want to, but like that just kind of really like hit me hard. And I excuse me, graduated, worked really hard on like GRE and applying to graduate schools. But there was a lot of heartache in the midst of that. So, like I said, the educator in me wanting to share astronomy with the world. I had an internship at Space Telescope Science Institute. Yes, I came there as an intern, worked kind of I was on the record, but wasn't officially hired at Space Telescope for about 9 months. And then they created my role at Space Telescope. And I had the fortune of 7+ years talking about Hubble, the amazing James Webb Space Telescope. I've lost track of how many talks that I've given, but I've been boots on the ground, going to schools, being here at the U.S. Science and Engineering Festival. And every year I lost my voice. Me and the IR camera were best friends. And this is an infrared image. And these are actually my minions at the time within it. So spent my career, like I took this amazing leap of faith, despite kind of how I was advised. I was blown away that I went to Space Telescope and they had 40+ people doing outreach. And so this whole time I've been told, do it on the side. Like there were whole organizations that were doing this. It was just mind blowing. It was an amazing experience. I had opportunities to also be a part of the first diversity group at Space Telescope, which was like changing. I took all of that knowledge that I had gained from Space Telescope and really wanted to take that to the role that I had at NRAO. And so here's me at ALMA of Atacama Large Millimeter and Submillimeter Array in Chile. Yes, I have oxygen. It's just because it's really high altitudes. Yes, I was fine in the image. This is the VLA, the Very Large Array, and then the Green Bay Observatory. And throughout, I've been able to engage with students and give amazing presentations. Okay, I want to go to the next slide, but just want to warn everyone, it's going to go black and it's very intentional. Yeah. So I've just shared with you this journey that I've been on. Sorry, I have to change something on my end for a second. Okay, so this is a candle here. If I can get back to screen, sorry. Okay, so this is a candle, and this is representative of my own light. Metaphorically, like my life light. And I've shared with you a bit of ups and downs kind of that I've went through throughout my STEM journey. And I just want to say that I had this ignition in wanting to be in STEM from Dr. Zhu. And along the way, things happened. Losing my mentor, going to graduate school, taking astronomy courses for the first time, being with others who had studied astronomy. I remember I wasn't necessarily kicked out of a study group, but kind of kindly asked to maybe not keep showing up because I was taking up a lot of space because I had some gaps. That was hurtful. Really wanting to follow my passion with STEM, but kind of being told that's not here, that's not right now. traveling, having this amazing mentor, my thesis advisor, pour into me and then devastate me, broke my heart for years. One purpose to say we've reconciled for another story for another time, but heartbreaking. I lived with it for years. I graduated. Again, I told you I had been told since as much as I turned into deciding to major in physics that PhD was the only path. And I decided that I did not want to do that. Felt devastated. Didn't feel like I was a physicist for years. It took me years. I'm so ashamed to say how long. It took me years to confidently say that I was a physicist. Gone throughout my career, experienced microaggressions, experienced wanting to make change within the systems and organizations that I was a part of. Through mentorship, I got to lead the summer student program. I got to lead programs at NRAO. I got to be a part of diversity groups, but I was told I talk about diversity too much. I've experienced white fragility. And there was a moment in my life where I wanted to walk away completely from the STEM field. But I'm grateful for people that maybe weren't always in STEM, people that were connected to my faith, people who believed in me, and most importantly, my students that I knew I had impact. I had a turning moment when I wanted to leave the field. I felt devastated, something that I cared so much about. I'm curious about the science. I care about what we're doing. And the turning point, the way that my light couldn't go out. I know it's hard to see. My light didn't go out. It's still shining. And the part that helps me still shine, it helps me still stay present. I share often that I felt like I've gone through a grieving process within our field. And the place that I've come to acceptance is focusing all my energy in wanting to support undergraduates, even younger students, to support them through their STEM journey through mentorship. It has been my life force. So you may have heard my students dearly call me Auntie Jess. It's rooted in leading with emotional intelligence, holistic mentoring. It's important for me to make my students feel seen and to feel heard, active listening, building up their professional, academic, and life skills, using what I have learned about the politics, about how to navigate this STEM space, sharing that with them, and modeling vulnerability and transparency as I've done here and will continue to do throughout these slides. It's the students. There have been times I've been crying in my office, crying in the bathroom, gathering it together to pour in to the students. These are just some. I wish I could have all of them that I have come across my pathway. But this is what I have decided that I wanted to do and my contribution to this field. I know it's untraditional. I know it's maybe not always praised, it may be a thankless job, but I felt like I can impact their lives. I can pour into them the lessons that I have learned, the lessons that I have experienced to make them successful. And so I have a great opportunity to work for Vanderbilt, the University of Florida, CIPAC, which is at Stanford, of course, NRAO, shout out to Lindell, and then WAM Academy. I'm currently working with WAM Academy. It's an online platform. And even this year, these are some of my team members on the side, and they have been, it's been an amazing project to pour into when things were kind of tumultuous in my own professional career. So I shout out to my team. I so appreciate you and thank you for the work that we're doing. But WAM Academy is an online mentoring platform that is revolutionizing mentor, where students are able to engage with people that look like them. So the Black males that look like them, and center a range of careers and experiences and backgrounds to make them feel seen. It's been amazing to work, to launch out all my career. I've launched out to do what I felt was really important, but now in my career, the blessing to be able to choose and to partner with people who are aligned with my vision and where I care deeply about. So we'll pause and give moments for questions. Again, if you have questions, adding them in the Q&A if possible, and we'll pause for a few moments. if any of what I resonated, any of what I said resonated or maybe struck something with you, light up the comments with a yellow heart. Yeah. Thank y'all for not making me feel alone. We'll keep pushing through many slides. So again, I intentionally wanted to share with you and wanted to respond to the question of why mentorship is important through my journey, because I wanted to show you the parallels of an amazing mentor who believed in me and poured in me and changed my trajectory to, like I said, my thesis advisor who also changed my trajectory in a positive way. Like I said, we were able to reconcile and actually had, amazingly, we had this conversation 10 years. It was 10 years post my master's degree. And as much as that moment bothered me and haunted me and just there was a lot of pain around that for many years, to talk to him and hear that also had bothered him. And I got, explanations and understanding from where he was coming from. It shows that we have a lot of power being mentors. We have a lot of power being advisors. So we need to be conscious of that. So just wanted to drop that seed. Why mentorship is important, because you are the one influencer that can change the trajectory of a student's life. So we shouldn't take that lightly by any means. I said in the abstract that I wanted to tell you guys about the American Institute of Physics. We're scientists. I'm a scientist. Some of you may be on here are scientists. We love data. There's nothing wrong with it. We want to be able to base our practices and what we're doing on found research. And so I always want to highlight and uplift this team and the work that they have done. This report. So it's a TEAM-UP report, and it stands for the National Task Force for Elevating African-American Representation in Undergraduate Physics and Astronomy. They conducted a 2-year study to gain insights on what's going on with experiences of undergraduates, Black students that are underrepresented within our field. And in 2019, they released the results. And there were 5 factors that came out of this research that I want to just go over briefly. One is belonging. Fostering a sense of belonging is essential for African-American students to persist and be successful. Sense of belonging is defined as an individual's feelings of being welcome and contributing member of the community. When Dr. Zhu messaged me and said, "You're going to be my student," oh, I felt like I belonged. I felt seen. I felt a part of this community. And again, in that email, it wasn't just I was going to be his student. We were going to come home with the first prize. So he was invested in me. And so that sense of belonging is so important for our field and for our students within this space, right? The data. I love data. I say all the time, and maybe it's a broken record, keep saying this, but I never needed the data to tell me what it was like being a Black woman in the field. I knew when I graduated from Grambling State University that I was the only one to graduate that year. I knew it. But the data shows and confirms that. The other thing about the data that is also a little disturbing, and again, what this report is addressing, is the year that I graduated, there were less, at this particular year, African Americans earned 9% of all the bachelors that year. 9% of all the bachelors that year. I was doing a little bit of research for this, and the studies showed that even in 2018, this is, can't do the math, 10 years post when I graduated, 3% of physics bachelors were earned by African Americans. The numbers are not getting better. Just wanted to show, just for fullness and to bring it full circle, even when I graduated my master's, the number of they did this across 3 years, but even in a 3-year average, only 18 students who graduated with their master's in physics. This is me, y'all. I'm in this number, right? And so I intentionally say that I never need the numbers because of what I experienced and what I have experienced in my career. I've often been the only Black female within my organization or in my group, or when I was attending conferences, I was one of few. So I take very seriously the ability to share and change and be disruptive, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Physics identity. To persist, African American students must perceive themselves and be perceived by others as future physicists and astronomers. This is defined as is how one sees oneself with respect to physics as a profession. As I said to you guys, it was devastating to me to walk away from a program that I couldn't add to their numbers. And they're an amazing, successful program. Shouts out to Fisk Vanderbilt Bridge program. They're unique in what they're doing. I couldn't be a successful number that I bridged over and that got that PhD. That's why I didn't see myself as a physicist for years. That physics identity, seeing myself as a professional. I'll never forget when AAS released that you could be a full member with having a master's degree. And I was able to submit my application and become a full member based on my master's, not because another full member who had a PhD referenced me, but on my own. Like, y'all, I was proud and I felt a part of this community. And this was years post when I graduated from undergrad, so in graduate school. So that sense of identity is so important for our African-American students. The third factor is academic support. It may seem so obvious, right? The physicists, they're getting their degree, but the effective teaching and strength-based approach to academic support is necessary for African-American students' retention and their success. So it's important that we show up with more effective ways to identify students' capabilities and their strengths. And I think that's something I was missing in graduate school, is I had these strengths. Again, I'm a physicist, like I'm doing the classes, I'm passing my coursework. If someone could only have maximized and recognized my potential capabilities, sharing that. Personal support. Many African-American students need support to offset financial burdens and stressors. I have so many stories of how that has been true in my life, but they've shown that challenges are the greatest difficulty facing African-American students compared with students of non-racial. So there are other things happening that are outside the academic. Some of it's academic, but sometimes outside of the academic that we need to address for our students and be consider, especially our department chairs. Leadership for sustainability, academic and disciplinary leaders must prioritize creating environments, policies, and structures that maximize African-American student success. And so again, it's the responsibility of our leadership. I know y'all may have heard it a lot, but it's from the top down. We have responsibility, you have responsibility at department chairs to play key roles in setting and acting departmental priorities. So the goal, you may wonder what the task force was. They proposed that they wanted to double the number of African-American getting their bachelor's degree by 2030. Congratulations to this team. They have received Achievement in Physics Education Award, and they received a multi-million-dollar scholarship to help African-American students that offers $10,000 per student per year to offset financial burdens that they may be facing. So shouts out to this team. If you haven't come across the report, I can post a link later. If those are here to support me, maybe you could post it. It's worth the read in totality. It's also worth, if you don't have that much time, at least reading the recommendations from this report. I want to give also shouts out to the project manager of this team who received an award for the work that she's been doing for over a decade, advocating and supporting and promoting equity diversity for minority students. So shouts out to Arlene for her hard work. I'll pause for questions.
Yeah, you have a few questions, Jessica. You've got one from Andy, which is any general advice for a cis male STEM educator, no STEM degree, studied theater, and how to best support and mentor students who aren't like me. I work at a Hispanic serving institution.
Awesome. Great question. Thank you for that, lifting that Linda, and thank you, Andy, for asking the question. I am going to get to this in our next slide, but since you asked it here, I will answer it here. I will again share, but Andy, I want you to encourage you that one, you have a lot of privilege, you have a lot of power. I think tapping in to that power, ways that you can advocate for your students that can help support them. I also think it's important to really ask questions of your students and be curious about them, asking them, what are they passionate about? What are they into? I know you're not a STEM professional, but I think the role, we are talking about STEM because of this particular platform, my background, but I think it's universal. The advice that I would give is just holding space for them and leveraging your power, finding ways that you can help support them in some way. And even sometimes mentorship or supporting students, the best ways to support them is having access to resources. When I've been working with students, sometimes I'm pointing them to self-care practices. Sometimes I'm pointing them to therapists. Sometimes I'm pointing them to, I don't know, silly things. But I think just being a resource for them, and again, leveraging the power that you have and the privilege you have for their good. But thank you for posing that question. Was there
Yeah,
another question?
there's another really interesting one from Lynn who asks about toxic mentors. I think many of us have been assigned a mentor who is toxic. Do you have any advice or wisdom about what to do about that?
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. Great question. Hopefully I have good advice to give you. Again, we as mentors have an amazing role, and we can change the trajectory of a student's path. I think I would say to the student, you are not alone. No matter how much it may seem. It was devastating. When my thesis advisor told me he wasn't going to write me a good recommendation for graduate school, I felt like my whole world was going to shatter. Who's going to write this for me? Luckily, I was a part of a program where others came in and wrote me strong letters. And so I would ask of the students to first not suffer in silence, share with someone that you trust what is happening. To the mentor, to the colleagues that see this bad behavior, don't call out. Call in, trust your students when they're coming to you about this toxic person, because most likely the toxic person is toxic to everyone and not just a certain set of people. And so we have to be brave. We have to be willing to change the system as it is. And so I would encourage those that have a toxic environment, again, for the students, please seek help. Please don't suffer in silence. Please go to your department head. Please go to another faculty member that you can trust to help champion this concern for you. And again, colleagues, check in a very calling in manner the colleague that has this issue or is displaying this toxic behavior.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about checking in with other students, I know that I think many of us have had this experience where we think we're suffering in silence. And then when we open up and talk to our peers, we realize that we're not alone in having that experience with that one person or maybe other people. And I would recommend not to suffer in silence.
Yes. And that was the thing when my thesis advisor told me what he said about, not having esoteric skills. One, I love he said in the comment about what does that mean, was one of the first thoughts. But the second was like, how do I go to my other, I was embarrassed, even though I wasn't the one that did something wrong. I felt embarrassed by what he was saying, that maybe he's, again, like imposter syndrome and doubting myself, like maybe he's right. Maybe he sees something I don't see, like this whole downward spiral that wasn't good. And so that's why I come from the advice of not suffering in silence. Again, I'll share later, but there are communities, virtually, there are communities like myself, like this organization here. So again, shout out, I am available if you have questions, if you have concerns, if something you're not sure of that you want to bring about, or you don't know how to have this conversation, please reach out. But please just don't suffer in silence. I want to respect everyone's time and go to the next, but if you still have questions, you don't feel free to add them as we go along. And I'll have one more pause at the end for questions, but please put your questions in the chat as we're going along. So perfect. This is a great segue into my Auntie Jess mentoring best practices. Again, I said it before, I'm gonna keep saying it. It starts with you. We have to be aware. Part of what I said earlier about being present, we have to be aware and in tune with our own selves. We may not always realize when we're doing something wrong, but we have to be open to feedback. We have to be open to learning something new. Like Andy had in the question there about he's cisgendered male, but he's working with Hispanic students, like being a part, reading literatures, being a part of the virtual community, understanding their point of view, what they're going through, like taking that extra effort, right? It's okay. You don't have that, or maybe even those shared experiences, but doing the work to figure that out. How can you relate to them? How can you be present with them? It requires action. Again, it starts with you, but requires action. All the things that I said, researching, studying, being self-aware, being in tune with yourself, and being radical, right? This system in STEM is not going to change because we sit down and have conversations and sit back idly. We have to actively want to make a change. And so it doesn't require just any action. It requires radical action. You got to be introspective. You have to be okay with making mistakes. I'm intentional about this space saying calling in and not calling out. You can fight me about the calling in versus calling out, but I believe we have to create a space where you feel comfortable to come to me. I have to be able to come to you and say, hey, Linda, you said something that bothered me. I felt I experienced a microaggression against you. And we should have an open conversation. And Linda, I'm just picking on you, should be receptive to what I have to say. Let's be honest. Let's be transparent. Let's let go of being the good guy. Most of us are good people. Just because I say to Linda, hey, Linda, I experienced this microaggression against you, doesn't make her a bad person. She missed that. Maybe I'm sharing to something to her that she didn't know. Feedback is a blessing. Accountability. Again, when I said earlier, the advice I gave to Andy, we got to hold each other accountable. Often toxic people, toxic systems, toxic-ish, the things we have to deal with, we all see it, we all know it. Often when it's called out, it's no surprise. We got to hold people and each other accountable, willing to be disruptive. A dear, awesome colleague, partner of mine, she's on, she'll know I'm talking to her specifically, but I believe in good trouble. I'm not here that I want the system to be the same. I want the system to change so I don't have to be Auntie Jess. I can just be Auntie Jess but not because I'm supporting just African-American students because they're struggling, because they don't feel seen, because they're experiencing the same things I experienced 12 years ago. I'm going to cause trouble. And so I've been a part of organizations doing that. I'm on my own still doing that. I think it's important to disrupt. We're physicists, right? Something in motion will stay in motion until something disrupts it. Something comes in its pathway. So we got to be willing to be disruptive. Also, and one of my best practices, I believe in community. As I was sharing with you guys earlier, when I almost lost it, when I wanted to walk away from the field altogether, I'm not joking. I was thinking about going back to Burger King, being a Lyft driver, something that had nothing to do with STEM. It was people outside of my physics space that believed in me, that poured into me. I love this Zulu term that's Ubuntu. Based upon the recognition, we are only people because of other people. I've heard it phrased another way. I am because you are. Your existence to me matters. My existence to you matters. We are communal together. I wish I can highlight all of them. The two that I have highlighted are ones I have been in direct contact with or supported in some way. But there's many. If you just type Black in whatever, Black in biology, Black in physics, Black in astro, you're going to find it on social media. If you need to get started, message me. I'll give you my LinkedIn information. But shouts out to Black in astro. They've gained a lot of momentum over the last couple of years, and to Vanguard STEM. That's a virtual space for members within STEM to feel seen and feel heard within that space. Other organizations that I've been a part of and deeply connected to and have been so instrumental in my STEM career as the National Society of Black Physicists. I love going to the National Society of Black Physicists conference where we're seeing all of us awesomeness, doing amazing science, amazing research. And so connecting again back to resources, if you have African-American students, connecting them to this. There's so many organizations out there that I can name. I just specifically named National Society of Black Physicists because it was a big part of my undergrad and graduate school career. And so this is at one of the conferences. I actually remember attending this conference. I can't remember what year, but Dr. Jamie Valentine was taking pictures of our amazing African-American women who had their PhD in physics at this conference, or some of them even in astronomy. So another best practice is to leverage, I know I said it earlier, but leverage your power. I love this activity. It's called a bead activity. I've used this many times. I've adapted it from Dr. Salome. And what I love about this activity is that it has these listed privileges here. So sexuality, ability, gender, race, and underneath each of them has like 8 statements. And you read the statement, if it resonates with you, you pick up a bead. And no matter how many times I've done this activity, everyone walks away with beads. Some more than others, but everyone walks away with beads. I emphasize this to say we all have power. We all have privilege. I never forget going from being a graduate school student to having an official job. Like, my class privilege has changed dynamics over time. And so leveraging that is so important. Identifying them, right? Like, you may have privilege as a cis male or a cis white female. We're not knocking you for the privilege you have. We're just saying, like, use it for good. The same for me. I have privilege. I think all the time, my kids, my 2 minions are so fortunate because they have a mommy who loves science. So they're used to images like this. They're used to talking to other physicists. Like, that's their norm, right? Where they don't know that, like, mommy's one of a few. Like, I go to a lot of places and I get told often, like, I've never met a physicist. You're the first one I've met. So we all have privilege, and we have to learn how to identify those within us and use them for good. The last is urgency. This is happening right now. What I'm experiencing as a Black woman in the United States of America is happening right now. The experiences that your students are having in society, in their classrooms, in them just trying to do what they want to do to be a scientist. I wanted to show this candle for a reason, because it often gets snuffed out. Not because we don't have grit, not because we don't have the fight, not because we don't have the desire. It's all the things, it's all the microaggressions, it's all the fighting that we have to fight just to show up and be in the space. And so I want to encourage you tonight. There is an urgency. When we don't act, when we don't make change, when we don't care about this, when we have to ask questions of why mentoring is important, we're slowing things down, and it's affecting students that need this support right now. Okay, I'm going to cue y'all to participate with me. I really want to do a longer put a finger down challenge, but I wanted to do this for a specific reason. So I know we have 5 fingers, but we're only going to 2 here. So if I'm gonna read the 2 statements, if you have, so just put 2 fingers up. I'll read each statement. If it resonates, put it down. And then in the chat, when we're done, you're gonna put either you have 1, 2, or if you have 0. Okay, so the first is, put a finger down if you've been in fear in your heart when being stopped by the police. Put a finger down if you've had to teach your children how to not get killed by the police. If you can, for me, put in the chat how many fingers you have up. I know it's only 2, but if you have 1, 2, or 0. Seeing some 1s, I'm seeing some 2s. I'm not seeing any 0s. Okay. Thank y'all for participating. If I could, I'd have like 1.5. My kids aren't quite driving yet, but I know that one day I will have to sit my children down to teach them how not to be killed by cops. I mentioned this, you're like, Auntie Jess, what does this have to do with STEM? You just went left field. Let me tell you why. Again, the urgency that's happening now. I was at NRAO, and they were having amazing like affinity groups. And one of the groups before I left NRAO was about anti-racism. I didn't leave NRAO because of this particular conversation, but it was one of the last affinity groups that I was in. And one of my colleagues, very like, again, asking questions, wanting to know were there resources within the school that they can use to help support them to their students. And I shared the story about I have to teach my kids about what to do when being stopped by a cop out of keeping them alive. Like I have to, that there's not a time or space where I cannot do that. Like it literally like is life or death for them. I have to. And he was just sharing, and I've heard this from a lot of my colleagues. They don't think about that. They've never had that sit down talk about what happens when you get pulled over for police. And I say often in my practice and when I'm working with others that as scientists, again, why I said I never need the data, sometimes we're so much in the data, so much in our head, all up here, that we're not in our heart. That's why I wanted to show you all the data. I am that data. I am that one person that graduated from Grambling. I am that 2.7% that graduated with a bachelor's degree as a Black woman. So like I didn't ever do the numbers, but I want y'all to get into your heart. And so what I said in that meeting was this tweet that I posted, and it seemed to really resonate with people. It's one of my most popular tweets that I had. I don't highlight it for that, but I highlight it because I think it resonated with people. I said, raise your children in a way that don't grow up to kill mine. And it was the first time I said it out loud, where I was connecting what I was feeling in my heart and my mind to tell my colleagues, like, raise them in a way that they don't feel that my son as a Black boy, you're offended by him, or my Black daughter, that you're offended by her, right? So it's connected to what I'm saying, because that urgency is now. I have, like, again, I said, I've grown up as a military brat. I'm used to law enforcement being around me. I was in Baltimore when Freddie Gray was devastatedly, he died, and there was riots. And I will never forget, one day I was coming home, and in the Inner Harbor, there was a National Guard. That little girl who grew up almost her whole life in the military, it frightened me. I'm used to seeing it on a military base. That makes sense to me. In the city of Baltimore, it scared me. So I have lots of reasons why I'm nervous. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I do everything as much as legally as I do things legally as possible. I'm not afraid of that. I'm afraid of the exchange that I'm going to have with this police officer or my kids in the car. What's going to happen? Like, that's a real fear that I now have. I never had prior to this experience. So again, I want to make that heart and head connection that this urgency is happening now. Some of your students are suffering now. They're trying to balance their light of wanting to do this because they wanted to do this. They have this passion, they have this dream. They're going to be the next amazing people who are going to change science, but all of the things that they have to deal with, all of the microaggressions, all of the emotional labor just to show up in this space. So they're being affected right now. Students are navigating this. Like, this system wasn't built for them, and they're navigating it. So our students, let me tell y'all something. They got this swag and this fire. That's why I might teach this, because I don't want them to be successful. But just think about this in a whole space. I know this is a lot. I want us to take a moment to collectively take a deep breath. Let it out. Thank y'all for participating in that with me. All right. All right. So the next few things is be kind. Make others feel seen and heard, give them the gift of permission. Often when I'm working with students, they just need to know that their feelings, what their experiences are being validated. So saying statements like, I believe you, how did that make you feel? That your feelings are validated. You did experience this, and providing others with language. As us as mentors, we can provide our students with language. They're navigating this, and it's new for them. Center your needs of the students. Like, gone are the days where we're producing other academics just like us. There's so much that we can be doing in our field. And so if they want to be like you, perfect. You have the tools you can share with them, but being open to students when they want to maybe do something different. Like I wanted to be outreach. I've been so successful. I love what I'm doing. How can we create more people that have alternate career pathways? Here are my final thoughts. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. This is just a quick story, and then I'm going to go with my last thing, is that this is at an NSPP conference. We had like a Astro happy hour, and we had earlier that day, we had a session where we're getting feedback and gathering and breakout sessions. And at the end of it, I really wanted to tell them that I love them. And it's like, it's them. It feels weird. Like, can I say that? And one of the students on this call was like, you should have just said it. And I was like, you know what? I'm never going to ever lose again an opportunity to say this. So I'm ending with this to say to my mentees, current, past, future, it matters to me that you are in STEM. It matters to me that you keep showing up as your authentic self. You are needed in STEM. And thank you for my current ones and my past. Thank you for entrusting me for being Auntie Jess. I see you. You are valuable. You are needed. You are doing great. Keep being your authentic self. Special thanks. So we'll add this. Who do you need to see in the chat? I'll put this in the chat later on so you guys can connect with me on social media. And just special thanks to the Astronomical Society of the Pacific for having me here today. And thank you for my village and my people that have believed in me.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Jessica. You've got, I don't know if you're seeing all the love in the chat, but Andy said a wonderful thing. He said, thank you for sharing some of your many esoteric skills.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I really want to thank you for your honesty and your insights. This was really incredibly moving and really important Did anybody have any questions that they wanted to ask? You can ask in the chat or give people a moment. They're sending you all this love, so.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I know it resonated with many of us, myself of a certain age, and the many things we dealt with being the only woman in a department, and the macroaggressions and the microaggressions. Yeah. And so hopefully we can learn to break the wheel.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I was trying to keep the track to some of it, what was happening in the chat, but I appreciate you, sharing that. That is real. I'll never forget being at Vanderbilt. They have the women's bathrooms on every other floor. And it just shows like, that is so inconvenient. Like when men have it on every floor, I have to go to another floor. Like it's just those little things. And I didn't get to share it, but I believe strongly in the village, and part of the village is like honoring our past and honoring our heritage and those that have come before us, right? Like I know it sounds a little gloomy about like where we are and the changes that happen, but I do want to honor too, like there has been change, right? But we still want to keep pushing the needle. We don't want to get too comfortable. We want to keep pushing this needle moving forward.
Exactly, especially now.
Any questions? Come on, y'all. Like,
they're
presenter. I don't know. I don't get no questions.
Let's see. There is some question on YouTube. Thank you, Dave. Imani Makalia. Let's see. I can't pronounce the name. I'm sorry. Do you champion your own intersectionality? Do you rely on alliances? Have you ever attended SACNAS, the Society for the Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science conference?
Yes, I have attended SACNAS. That was one of the conferences that I was referencing. That you should send your students to. Yes, like if y'all don't know, please send your students to SACNAS. The one caveat is I know they are growing related to physics and astronomy into that space. I know like Space Telescope, NRAO has been there. And so it's not as heavy physics and astronomy, but I highly recommend that conference. Every time I've attended this conference, I've been a poster presenter and I've loved it. This is a really good question. I've never been asked this. How do you champion your own intersectionality? I would answer that by saying, showing up as myself, showing up fully. My kids are sleeping now, hopefully. I don't know. I've kind of had to like go to sleep, hope they're sleeping kind of thing. And so when I'm talking to people, I'm making sure that I'm bringing my best in this, and when I feel safe, all of who I am into that space. So being a mom, I'm also biracial, I'm white and I'm Black. And so I hold both of those spaces and experiences. How do you rely on alliances? I'm not quite sure what you mean by alliances, but absolutely in the spirit of aligning and partnering with others and working in tandem. Absolutely. I've done that all of my career.
And then from Baxter, oh my goodness, you've asked a tough one, right? Why the small percentage of Black folks majoring in physics? Fear of math? Fear of being labeled a nerd? Parental insistence to major in a field that will provide more money? How do we change that?
Read Baxter Smith, read the Team-Up report.
Yeah.
First and foremost, potentially parents wanting to go in a field that makes money. Very small. Actually, I don't think it's even mentioned in the report. I think you should read the report as the best way that I would answer that. And again, I want to go back to, it's not because they have fear of science or they're being labeled as a nerd. Fundamentally, it breaks down to the system that does not support them. As I was describing earlier, the system wasn't built for them. And so I didn't show it, but this is a common fact that, again, I graduated from 2 HBCUs, very fortunate to have full scholarships that covered it, almost, full scholarship at Fisk, and then mostly it was covered. I didn't have much that I came out of pocket with at Grambling, but I just had to say HBCUs graduate the top number of Black physicists, but they also don't have a lot of funding within their institutions. And so again, I encourage you, Baxter, if you have not read, please go and read the TEAM-UP report. It specifically addresses the question that you're asking. And not only does it ask these questions that you're asking and answers them, how do we change it? Those 5 factors, they provide recommendations on how you as a faculty or you as an organization can help change and push that needle. There was a question kind of in between Anna H. How can we more faculty and doing better in these areas? A great question. Again, I would say there are not just the AIP TEAM-UP report, but there are a lot of professional societies who have recommendations, and they actually even have like site visits where people will come out and assess. You can tag me. I'd love to come talk to your faculty. I think first and foremost, though, fundamentally, right, in all seriousness, I think it's going about taking the recommendations from the TEAM-UP report, really working with your department as far as like the culture, what things that you can change within the organization.
And before we bring this session to a close, the one thing I will say for those of you attending the Astronomical Society, the Pacific Symposium tomorrow, I'm going to do a shout out for Teresa Summers' session where she's going to be talking about how to communicate more inclusively and how to develop growth mindset and how to be a better mentor, essentially. So I'm going to do a shout out on that session, and there'll be other sessions like that tomorrow to take a look at. It is getting late, and I know for some of you it's getting very late, and that you're very welcome, Teresa. I want everybody to like wave your virtual hands together and give Jessica a lot of love and applause for really a very inspiring, very wonderful way to kick off our symposium tomorrow. And also a wonderful thing for the public. This will be on YouTube and archived, so you can always watch it again. And I want to thank our 2 ASL interpreters, Robin and Paula, for their wonderful work in helping make this accessible to everyone. And again, if you'd like to donate to the ASP and help us in our educational mission, we're going to put that link in the chat. Every little tiny bit adds up. So we would be thrilled if you'd like to support us. And that's what I have for this evening. So I want to thank Jessica again. Thank all of you for coming. And we wish you a very good evening.